had a question come in on the Further Emergence Discord. This person says, "Hi John, do you think that the Jungian concept of individuation is the same or similar to enlightenment? I've learned a little about it a while ago and now I Google it, and one definition is, individuation is the process, simple or complex as the case may be, by which every living organism becomes what it was destined to become from the very beginning. In Jung's view, no one is ever completely individuated. While the goal is wholeness and a healthy working relationship with self, the true value of individuation lies in what happens along the way. The goal is important only as an idea. The essential thing is the opus which leads to the goal. That is the goal of a lifetime." And then the person says, maybe it's not. All right, now, just on the off chance you don't know who Carl Jung is, he was a contemporary of and a student of Sigmund Freud, who was the first person really to kind of start using talk therapy to help people with mental health issues. And Freud is great and everything and very groundbreaking, but I never really warmed to him. I don't know if he was the sort of person one could warm to. But he had very groundbreaking insights about sex and how sex was the driving force in a lot of things. Then Jung comes along and he's, as I say, a student of Freud, and they're going great guns for a while and then they fall out. And Jung does his own thing. And so very much in the kind of the cliche of the person lying on the couch and the therapist saying, "Tell me about your childhood," in an Austrian or in Jung's case, Swiss accent. And, a lot of pictures you see of Jung is of like this kind of very, very nice looking old grandfather looking figure, with this sort of circular glasses and a very kind looking face. So some of the things that really stick out to me, I've read a couple of his books, and you can't work in consciousness and not bump into Jung. He's such a monolith in that kind of realm, and he's very groundbreaking, and really plowed his own furrow. Is that the right word? I think it is. Went his own way. So one thing that I've heard about him, not sure if this is true, but I like the idea of it, is that he used to make time every day to go down to his back garden and play with sticks in the dirt like a little kid. I'd always thought that was very profound. I don't do it myself, but the idea of play is, and like somebody who's so lived the life of the mind and consciousness so much that he made time for that. I always thought that was very significant. The other thing that always stands out to me is that he had a nervous breakdown himself, or what was called a nervous breakdown, during World War I. Now, I think Jungian scholars are a bit touchy about referring to it as a nervous breakdown. I don't think they like that. I think they have different names for it. From my reading of it, I think he had a spiritual crisis, because it was in his late 30s, and he'd achieved everything he'd wanted, money, success, prestige, wife, kids. He had it all. And he seems like he went into the dark night of the soul, because he didn't just have a nervous breakdown or a mental snap or a psychotic episode or anything like that. He recorded everything, and he discovered a lot about himself. And I think it's all in this book called The Red Book. Haven't read it, but that's his journey through that dark night of the soul. Another thing I like about him, or just a different perspective, is that film. It's called A Dangerous Method. It's got Michael Fassbender and Keira Knightley in it, and Viggo Mortensen. And it goes through the relationship between Freud and Jung, and Jung's relationship with this woman that Keira Knightley plays. And it's sort of a little insight into what he was like as a person. Don't know if it's historically correct. I probably is fictionalized, or, I think all the characters were real, but I don't know if the details are. But it's just a good look at it. And then the other thing, and I was trying to find this quote. I think I read it in one of his books. So he gives this, he's given this lecture, and in the lecture he gives an example of somebody who he diagnosed with a brain tumor, I want to say, and he did it through a dream, and he described the person's dream, and I didn't see the brain tumor thing coming at all, but he was completely right, and the person got surgery and all that. And one of the students in the lecture said, how did you arrive at that diagnosis from that dream, Herr Doctor? Okay, I'm adding that bit. And he gave this answer, which again, I'd love to quote directly, but I can't remember. But basically it took me 30 years to arrive at that diagnosis. And basically, it was a kind of a student put down, or a sort of slap on the head, basically going, you can't just get a quick little answer, like I'm not going to be able to trot out a little, here's how you do it, kids, and this little 5-minute explanation of how I did it. He says, basically, it's taken me years of gathering data. And I could really relate to it from people asking me about craniosacral things, or the distance work. How do you do that? It's taken me years and years and years and years to learn how to do it. And I always remembered that explanation, because until I really heard that, I kind of was trying to explain something that's just not explainable in a short period of time. Anyway, back to enlightenment. So, yes, those are some, that's a quote for sure. Here are some other quotes that I like from Jung. One is, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That is a beautiful little sentiment. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that's that thing of going, what I'm so interested in about making your unconscious conscious, actively getting involved in it, because when you're not actively involved in it, you feel like it's all fate, and you feel like, oh, it's just serendipity. And he was big on serendipity, but actual serendipity as against your unconscious working and you thinking that it's serendipity, which is a different thing. So that's a beautiful idea about making the unconscious conscious, so that you don't feel like it's your fate, but it's actually not, it's your unconscious. Now, the other one that's often talked about or trotted out from Jung in relation to enlightenment is, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is why I was saying I think he went through a spiritual crisis when in that time in World War I, because you don't arrive at something like that without really going into a lot of depth on the inside. The full quote, because often that bit is taken out of context, but the full quote is, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. That is just a megawatt paragraph. There's so much in that. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. I have found that to be true. This thing about you don't become enlightened by imagining, figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's my experience too. And then this thing of who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. That's why I sort of talk about consciousness so much, because outside is so distracting. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful distraction, but it is that distraction. It is that a distraction. So by looking inside, seeing what's going on in there, That's how you become enlightened. Another one, which I find as an enlightened person very insightful, from Carl. He says, even the enlightened person remains what he is, and is never more than his own limited ego before the one who dwells within him, whose form has no knowable boundaries, who encompasses him on all sides, fathomless as the abysms of the earth and vast as the sky. Now, that to me is talking about the mystery, which I talk about a lot. And I can totally relate to that. That all makes perfect sense to me, and that's my experience for sure. The only slight difference is this idea of the one who dwells within him. I don't see that as a separate thing. It's all me, and it's not, there's no other living inside me. It's all me. But it's more, from my perspective, it's more the Rumi idea of, you're not a drop in the ocean. You're the whole ocean contained in a drop. So it's like you're the drop and you're the ocean simultaneously. So I would see it more like that. But he seems to have a pretty good handle on being enlightened, and he's certainly, I don't know. I couldn't, there's no reference to him saying that he was enlightened or not. I suppose it wouldn't have been really fit with the paradigm or who he was. Maybe he did somewhere, maybe among his friends. But what I think stands out for me is it's great to listen to these people, lots of different people, me included, and hear all the lovely things they have to say. And if something resonates with you, great. But as soon as it does, then own it. Because if something resonates with you, it's already in you. It's not like, oh, I heard this from somebody. I do like to credit where I got things, that's for sure. Like I always acknowledge Barry Long, who was my spiritual teacher. And if I happen to hear somebody say something good that really resonates with me, I'll say, oh yeah, I heard this from this person or that person. I think that's, I don't know, something just courteous really, or it's an expression of gratitude. But the actual act of hearing something and it resonating with you, I think it's really important to own things. It's like you cannot know something, or something can't resonate with you if you don't already know it on the inside. It's just a reminder. And it's fine to listen to everybody and take what resonates with you and what doesn't resonate with you, even though you'd love it to resonate with you, to just let it go, Like as I say, Barry Long was my spiritual teacher, and like a lot of things he said really resonated with me, but there was a lot of stuff that didn't at all. And he would talk about some things and I would be glazing over. I just didn't relate, and that's fine. But it's really important to own what's yours, So if somebody resonates with you, then great, go right into it. Let it permeate you and let what it's bouncing off on the inside help it to come to the fore. So if you're a big fan of Carl Jung and it really resonates with you, and his description of individuation is, really resonates with you, beautiful. All right, I hope that helps.